How do you accurately assess wind damage to shingle roofs? In this video, we explore the critical factors that contribute to wind damage, from the aerodynamic forces that lift shingles to the creases, tears, and full removals that follow. We'll break down the common modes of wind damage, how wind interacts with shingles, and the telltale signs of wind damage across different installation patterns. Whether you're dealing with unsealed shingles, racked installation, or multiple types of storm damage, this Haag Education training will give you the tools that you need to identify and evaluate wind damage with confidence. Starting now.
In a world where you can be anything, be an adjuster.
Hey, what's up? Matt here with Adjuster TV, and thanks to Haag's long-standing sponsorship of Adjuster TV, I'm excited to bring you an exclusive preview from one of their highly regarded certification programs. After you watch this video, if you're looking to take your expertise even further, be sure to check out haageducation.com, where you can explore a wide range of property adjuster certifications that will help you sharpen your skills and stand out in the field. Haag's training is top tier, and I highly recommend you dive into their resources after watching this video. So let's get into it.
So as wind encounters a shingle, here you're seeing a shingle there with the butt edge down towards the lower left, and wind is blowing up the slope, coming from lower left to top right. So as the wind encounters that next shingle, it's going to have to kind of go around that shingle. It's going to stagnate a little bit at the butt edge, and it's going to go around it, and it's going to cause it to lift. And I'll note that this is a diagram we produced at Haag based on a graphic and a paper by Dr. Paterka of the University of Florida. We'll talk more about his research a little later on. So anyway, that pressure is going over and around that shingle edge, and it's going to create some lift at that butt edge of the shingle. So graphic to the left is more a kind of a diagonal, looking downward diagonally kind of view, and to the right, that's more of a profile view. So initially, our shingle is laying nice and flat. The wind comes along, pressure is sufficiently high enough, it starts to lift the butt edge of that shingle. So there is your middle image. Now, as that edge lifts, it creates a greater projected area perpendicular to the direction of the wind flow. So starts out, now we're looking at our image on the right, starts out on the leftmost image, we have a flat shingle. Look at to the blue to the right of that long rectangular black shingle. That's the projected area. In the middle image, as that shingle edge continues to lift, our projected area increases. That means for a given wind speed, for a given wind force, we have a greater area. Well, pressure equals force times area. So we're going to get a greater uplift pressure as that projected area increases. In the next image, that shingle continues to lift, the projected area becomes even greater. And so that shingle is going to crease. It may crease back and forth several times. It may tear off if it's a tab, or it may, that whole shingle, whether it's a 3-tab or laminated, may get blown completely off. So these are some modes of actual wind damage to shingles. So the first one there, top left, just missing tab. To the right, top right, that is a flipped tab. A crease tab on the bottom left, so it was flapping in the wind. Notice there's different creases across it. It's a crease band. It's flapping in the wind, and then it came back down. May be loose, and you can flip it up like you see top right. It may have sealed back down. Sometimes they will seal back down, or somebody may have done a temporary repair and put some sealant down. Don't know without being there. And then on the bottom right, that is just impact damage. Maybe it's a tree limb that came down. So different modes of failure. Just like with hail, how there's collateral indications of hail damage, dents and spatter marks, there also can be collateral indicators of wind damage. In this case, there's a roof divider. Maybe that's a CMU firewall between different condo units. And then we've got some aluminum flashing over that. And so that cap flashing has been folded back by the wind. So look at components in cladding that are most likely to be damaged first. Gutters, downspouts, vinyl soffits, aluminum soffits, flashing like that. awnings, screen enclosures, various things that will be damaged by wind, not just the roof. So the wind in this case, can you guess which direction it was blowing? Look at the tree there. Look at that palm tree blown over. So the wind was taking the tree in that direction. Where do you see damage on the roof? You're going to see it at that windward eave, and then you're going to see it along the ridge. And if you go all the way to the right of that palm tree, you can also see it there at the rake edge. This is a picture here. Maybe this is these are some lake houses. You've got boat houses out there. You got a little bit of a dock going out to the boathouse. And then you've got the houses, the main houses in the background. And so look at the damage to the windward slopes. Let's start with the boathouse in the lower right of the photograph. So that front slope, you have not only shingles missing, but you have decking exposed. And then as the wind goes around that building as well, around that roof, you see some more damage to the side. So that's showing you strong damage on the windward side. Look at the boathouse adjacent to it. More of a failure of individual shingles here, and that's something to point out. When shingles are very well sealed down to one another, they tend to fail in groups, often near an edge of the roof, a corner of the roof. If shingles aren't as well sealed to one another, they can fail individually, and that's kind of more like you're seeing there, lower left. Wind speeds increase with height, so contrast the damage to the boathouses to the damage to the houses themselves. Look at that house in the top left of the photo, again, down to the decking. Photo of shingles fluttering in the wind, being peeled back by wind as it's going on, windward corner. Racked shingles, again, they have that straight up and down installation pattern with the offset joints. So not only can you have shingles unsealing that pattern, but maybe missing some nails, easier to remove the shingles. And so that's what it looks like. It's kind of unzippering the roof. And I was once called out, South Florida, about a year or so after Hurricane Wilma, looked at a house very much like this. And there hadn't been a big windstorm since Wilma in this area. And adjuster had never seen anything like it, thought maybe it was fraud. And I looked at it. I looked at how the shingles had been installed and how there were a number of missing nails, and the ones that were left were very loose. And I said, no, this is a pattern of wind damage to a racked shingle installation. So this is a tab that's been creased. It's been folded back multiple times in the wind. Look where that crease is. The crease is just below the butt edge of the overlying shingle. So it's at the top of the tab exposure, and that's consistent with wind. And it's also darker black asphalt. That's indicating it's recent wind damage. Now this is a shingle that had been creased by wind, and it was face nailed back into place. So most likely this was a temporary repair by the homeowner. You don't want to face nail tabs. Obviously, you'd want to replace that tab, replace that shingle, as a matter of fact. Look at the creases here. You see the asphalt within the creases, gray, not as new. Let's go back to this one. Look at the asphalt within those creases, darker black, so newer, older. Again, different roofs, but it gives you an idea of age. This is an old flip tab. A couple of things here. Number one, this occurred over a joint between the underlying shingles, so we'll talk about unsealed shingles later on. And then look at the sealant transfer, rather the lack thereof. So you don't see sealant stuck to the bottom of the tab that's folded back. There was never, look how shiny it is too. It was never bonded here. So that asphalt on the seal strip never transferred. If you look to the left, you'll see it looks a little more faded. These are shingles that were flipped up by wind. Again, look at the back side of those tabs that are flipped up. You don't see any transfer of sealant to them. So are there ridge shingles gone? Nope. Ridge shingles were sealed, the ridge caps, I mean, themselves. But if you take an area exposed to higher wind forces, like along the ridge, add to that mix that the shingles were not sealed, more prone to wind damage. Makes sense, right? So newer and older wind damage, you've got an overlay here. And so those brown shingles there on the bottom. And then it looks like this was multiple storms damaging this roof. Again, you're just looking at an up-close snapshot. But imagine, for example, opposite facing slopes with damage near both of their eaves, for example, and different things like that may point out to differences from storms, multiple storms perhaps, damaging a roof. So these shingles were also torn and displaced by wind, flipped up. Take a look at that. Ridge caps. So you have ridge vent and then shingles installed over the ridge vent. And whether or not these shingles were well nailed or not, ridges we know are subjected to stronger wind forces. And in this case, were removed by the wind. Hip ridge. So again, elevated in if you think back to those ASCE diagrams, they were a zone 2, so a zone of elevated wind forces. And in this case, they were removed by wind. Looks fairly recent if you look down along where those missing shingles are, and you see the difference in weathering from that compared to the surfaces with long-term exposure. Obviously, those were exposed somewhat recently. Wind damage to the ridge. And here we have a gable end near the ridge. So again, elevated wind forces, and you can see the shingles flipped and is down there in the gutter. Wind damage to a rake near the ridge. So again, in a gable type of roof, that would be a zone 3, so the most severe uplift forces on the roof. And so wind got in at that rake and it peeled the shingles back. Looks like they were well bonded to each other. That's why they failed in a group, again, initiating at an edge. More of the same, gable end, failure initiating at the edge of the roof. And a shingle just torn off, 3-tab shingle torn off. A couple of things here. Notice it's also over a joint. And notice the high nailing of the shingle below it. That could have affected its ability to seal down. Here we see a raised nail where a shingle was torn off. So that tab had been lifted up by that protruded nail. And again, that creates more of a projected area, more opportunity for wind to get up there and lift up and then tear off, in this case, that tab. This shingle, this roof, I should say, shingles had been installed in a diagonal offset method, and they failed probably also if this was a wider view. You'd see a rake edge there to the left, and you can see the underlayment. Similar to the one we saw with the racked installation, you can tell right away that this roof was installed with the diagonal offset. This slope was installed from bottom right up to the top left. Shingles torn off in that pattern. So tab overlaps were not sealed before, in this case it was a hurricane, and we're seeing a damage in the pattern of installation. And another racked installation pattern of damage. So straight up pattern, very recent. Tabs hadn't been sealed before the hurricane hit. And sometimes the tabs just aren't sealed when they're installed. We'll talk about, and sometimes they unseal over time. We'll talk about unsealed tabs coming up. This is interesting. You see the vertical offset installation, that racked installation on the right, the diagonal installation on the left. So maybe this was a straight up and down racked installation until they got to about the top of that hip, and then maybe they went up diagonally there. And you see the net result is regardless of how it was installed, we have damage to those field shingles. We have some damage to the adjacent hip ridge.
Understanding wind damage is essential for thorough and accurate roof assessments. If you're ready to deepen your expertise and gain certification in wind and hail damage assessments, consider joining the Haag Certified Reviewer Program. Master the skills you need to confidently assess roof damage from wind and other forces. Head on over to haageducation.com to enroll today and take your career to the next level with Haag. In the meantime, check out this video. Go ahead, go on. Just click right there. Tappity tippity tappity.